Sometimes the worst crimes don't come from criminal masterminds or cold-blooded sociopaths. They come from ordinary people who make one bad choice, then another, until they've crossed a line so far that there's no coming back. This is the story of what happens when two broke stepbrothers get hooked on meth and decide that robbing a bank is a good idea. Spoiler alert, it's not. And the body count proves it. Picture Oskaloosa, Iowa, 1997. A town of about 10,000 people where everybody knows everybody else's business, which would have been perfect for these guys if they'd kept their mouths shut. They didn't. Jamie McMahon was 22, charismatic, the kind of guy who could walk into a room and get people's attention. He'd just lost his job at a local plant, which meant he had time on his hands and zero prospects. His stepbrother, Christopher Kauffman, was 18 and had just graduated high school. Nobody really noticed him much. A quiet kid, non-athletic, the kind of person who gets lost in the background. But that summer of 1997, something happened. These two started hanging around each other constantly, and more importantly, they started doing methamphetamine. It wasn't unusual in Oskaloosa. According to one of their childhood friends, basically every kid in their social circle was either using meth, making meth, or selling meth. If you weren't involved, you were an outlier. So here's where we are. Two stepbrothers, unemployed or just out of school, hooked on drugs, with no money and no future. The kind of situation that would make desperate people think desperate thoughts. On the morning of June 10th, 1997, Jamie and Christopher sat around with one of those conversations that starts as a joke and ends as something else entirely. They needed money, lots of it, for drugs, for living, for pretending like they weren't complete failures while everyone they knew seemed to be doing better. That's when Jamie had an idea. Rob the Gibson Bank. On the morning of June 11th, 1997, Barbara Garber got ready for work like any other day. She was 52 years old, reliable, the kind of person who showed up. That's why her boss got worried when she didn't arrive, so worried that he called the cops for a welfare check. When officers arrived at her home around 9:30 in the morning, they found her sitting in a chair. She'd been shot twice in the head and twice in the chest. Her green Ford pickup truck was gone. A neighbor had seen a strange car in her driveway early that morning. Two suspects, two vehicles involved. The investigation was already pointing in a direction that the cops didn't fully realize yet. Why Barbara Garber? Here's the thing about making decisions while high on meth. You don't make good ones. Jamie had seen Barbara driving that green pickup truck. It was exactly the kind of vehicle he wanted for the bank robbery. A nice, nondescript truck that could get them away fast and wouldn't stand out. So he and Christopher went to her house. They knocked on the door. When she answered, thinking they were just some local kids, they asked to use her phone. Once they were inside, Jamie looked at Christopher. He told him that to prove himself, to really be part of this, Christopher needed to shoot Barbara. Christopher did. Then they took her truck and left her dead in her living room. It was cold, it was calculated, and it happened because two meth-addicted kids decided they wanted a specific vehicle for a bank robbery. Less than an hour later, at the Gibson Bank just 8 miles away, two guys in ski masks walked in carrying a .22 caliber handgun. "Hand over the money." "Now." The teller did. $65,000. The robbers left in a blue sedan, a car that belonged to Eileen Schultz, an 18-year-old girl from the area who Jamie and Christopher knew. Because here's where it gets worse. After the robbery, Jamie decided he actually wanted to keep Barbara's green truck for the getaway instead of the blue sedan, which meant they needed to get rid of Eileen Schultz's car, and more importantly, they needed to get rid of Eileen Schultz. They drove to her house. When she answered the door, they asked for gas money as she handed them $5. $5. Jamie shot her in the back of the head and then in the forehead. She collapsed and died. Two people dead, 2 hours, all because two broke, high, 22-year-old and 18-year-old kids wanted money for drugs and had access to a gun. The cops connected the dots fast. Same caliber gun, same morning. Both deaths connected to a bank robbery, stolen vehicles, and a clear pattern. By that afternoon, authorities had identified Jamie Mcmahan as the primary suspect. But he and Christopher had already disappeared. What they did instead was invite two local teenage girls, 16 and 17 years old, to join them in the stolen truck with $65,000 in cash. They told the girls they were going to Florida to hit up the theme parks. For several days, they drove south. Mcmahan and Kauffman spent money like it was nothing. Liquor, drugs, prostitutes, everything they couldn't afford back in Iowa, they bought. By the time they got to Disney World in Orlando, the girls asked the obvious question: where did all this money come from? The investigation back in Iowa was heating up. Multiple witnesses had seen the truck. Neighbors had identified the green pickup at the murder scenes. The case was solid. Late June 1997, America's Most Wanted aired a segment featuring Jamie Mcmahan and Christopher Kauffman. They ran it twice. On June 30th, a woman in Pensacola, Florida, recognized the distinctive green Dodge Dakota pickup with Iowa plates. She called police. Within hours, the truck was located at a motel. The Pensacola Police Department didn't mess around. They called in the SWAT team. They called in a hostage negotiator. They surrounded the building. The negotiator called the room. A guy picked up the phone, not Jamie or Christopher, a hitchhiker they'd picked up along the way who got caught up in their drug-fueled road trip. "I'm a hitchhiker," the guy said. "They picked me up. We've been partying, doing lots of drugs and alcohol." But then Jamie grabbed the phone from him and started yelling at the negotiator. The standoff didn't last long. The hitchhiker was released. Christopher came out and surrendered. Then Jamie walked out and gave himself up. Police found $29,000 in cash, less than half of what they'd stolen, and the .22 caliber handgun used in both murders. They planned to rob the bank to get money for meth. But when Jamie saw Barbara's truck, he got fixated on it. They went to her house. She let them in. Jamie decided Christopher needed to prove himself by shooting her. Then, after the robbery, Jamie wanted to keep the truck instead of the blue sedan. So he needed a different car. He thought of Island Schultz. So, I'm kind of new to this YouTube thing, but, not a bad first video, don't you think? Well, I might be wrong. But hey, subscribe so I can make more videos for y'all. Your feedback would be greatly appreciated. When Christopher said he wasn't going to shoot her, Jamie did it himself. Shot her in the back of the head, shot her in the forehead, took her car. All of it came out in the confession. Cold, detached, no excuses. When police asked Christopher if he felt bad about any of it, his answer was chilling. "No, not really. It's just what it is. 2 people dead. 48 hours of chaos. And these 2 kids had done it all in the blind stupor of methamphetamine addiction. The charges were federal and state, first-degree murder, bank robbery, aggravated robbery, carjacking." Jamie and Christopher's lawyers negotiated a plea deal to avoid the death penalty. They received life sentences in federal court and consecutive life sentences in state court. Neither of them would ever get out, ever. Jamie Mcmahan served 20 years of that sentence. In November 2017, in a federal prison in Florence, Colorado, he took his own life in his cell. Christopher Kauffman is still in prison. He's 42 years old now. He's been in prison for longer than most people work their entire lives. 2 teenagers made one bad decision. Actually, they made dozens of them, each one worse than the last, and destroyed not just their own lives, but the lives of 2 innocent women, traumatized 2 teenage girls, devastated 2 families, and shattered an entire community. All for $65,000 in a green pickup truck. Jamie Mcmahan and Christopher Kauffman didn't plan a heist. They didn't outsmart anyone. They just stumbled through 2 brutal murders and a bank robbery like they were drunk at a party, and only got caught because they kept driving around in a stolen truck with stolen money, apparently thinking no one would notice. It's not a story about brilliant criminals. It's a story about how quickly everything can fall apart when you've got nothing to lose.